storytelling for me is the tool that has been used from the beginning of time, no matter what philosophy or religion or spiritual path you have. Everything starts with a story that heals, that teaches, that moves civilization forward.
Life has been too generous for me. I am sure it's also generous to you. And in the day to day life, there are times when life gets really difficult for immigrants and, of course, for everybody else. And there are times when, because of our resilience as human beings, we're able to overcome and thrive and continue to succeed. Welcome to the Immigrant Nation podcast, where stories cross borders and voices build bridges. Today, we are deeply honored to host a true force of light. Dr. Elayna Fernandez is a best-selling author, global celebrated storyteller, and the empowering founder of the Positive Moms. From surviving poverty and trauma in the Dominican Republic to taking the TEDx and United Nations stages, her journey is a powerful testament or testimony of resilience, motherhood, and radical hope. In today's episode, please note, has been sponsored by Medicab Group of Companies, the trusted private ambulance service serving families across Florida and Texas. Because caring begins before the emergency, we want to thank Group of Companies for their sponsorship. Dr. Fernandez, welcome to the Immigrant Pod. I am truly excited you're finally here. What say you?
Oh, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. As an immigrant, it is just my pleasure to be part of this community and to be interviewed by you. What a joy today.
Of course, yes. We have been looking forward to this day. So, your journey started from the Dominican Republic slums to a profound stage to the UN body, and that there encapsulates what resilience is all about. Walk us through what was your growing up like as a child, and how has that developed into the person you are today?
Yeah, thank you for asking that because, a lot of us come to this country, to the United States, and we arriving here with I would say a heavy journey already on our shoulders. And I remember when I came to the United States, I had just a little carry-on roller bag. I had a lot of dreams and a lot of objectives and a lot of goals and a lot of illusion. However, I also had a lot of weight, and the trauma was weighing on me, and I really didn't even know that. And so I believe that one of the experiences that truly shaped my life happened before I immigrated to the United States, and it definitely shaped my life, like you said. Not only growing up in poverty, not only experiencing abuse and violence in my childhood, not only really and truly hanging on to all of the words that were said about me, negative labels that were stuck to me, and that I believed, which led me to then thinking about suicide every single day. So I already experienced all of these traumas and all of these experiences, but I think the most important thing was the vision that I had for myself. And that's something that I think I want to share with everyone today, is that no matter our circumstances, no matter the things that externally we see as evidence of our failure, as evidence something that's wrong with us, that if we stick to a vision of a different place, a different stage, a different identity, we'll definitely achieve it. And for me, it happened when I was 7 years old, and I had just come back from fetching water with my brother. He was 5 years old. We go to the landfill behind our home, which was a beat up shack that we truly loved because that's where we lived, and we absolutely loved the landfill because that's where we played, and that's where we found little treasures and little items that we played with, and it was our heavenly place. And I found this magazine in the middle of the stench and the dirt and the trash and it was soggy and muggy, but it had pictures that really inspired me. And they were pictures from the United States. There were pictures of kids that had tennis shoes, and they had, kind of soccer balls, I think. I don't really quite remember, but they had just toys and books. That was my favorite. I always dreamed about having a book of my own, not having to walk many kilometers to the library and then have to give it back. I, don't know why, but I couldn't even check out books at the library. I had to read them there and then leave. And so I thought, oh my goodness, what if I could have this life? And I told my brother, if we learn this language, we can have this life. And that's when I started to think about learning English and changing my life. And even through those circumstances, sticking to that vision and having that vision really ingrained and burned in my mind is what really got me through. So I think, even though the adversity did shape me, and I really gained a lot, like you said, about gaining a gift from the pain, and actually that's the name of one of my book series that you mentioned. I think that focusing on that vision was the pivotal key to where I am today. And I'll tell you why. Fast forward to when I lived in the United States. I moved here in 2001 permanently, even though I had already traveled here for college programs that I was part of. And one thing that happened is that when my daughters were 1 and 2, I have 4, and they are all girls, if you can imagine. And they have all names. So if you think Elayna is confusing, think Elisha, Elisa, Eliana, Olivia. It's like, don't even try. But when my first two were 1 and 2, we found ourselves in the streets. We found ourselves really struggling. I had just become a recent single mom. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to go. I didn't have a car. I didn't know how to drive. I didn't have a bank account. I just didn't have anything. And my family, for any immigrant who's listening, we know how difficult it is to get a visa. We know how difficult it is to, go from one country to the other. And so my family tried to come and help, but they just couldn't make it work. And I was all alone. And I remember being on the ground in the fetal position and thinking, you know what? That's it. I think I'm more useful to my kids dead than alive. I couldn't take him with me if I even went back because they were US citizens and I wasn't. So I wasn't able to be with my girls, and I just didn't think there was a path forward. I just didn't have the support or the skills or the, things that I thought I needed to have to survive. And in that moment, the one thing that came to my mind when I remember to pray for a sign was that I thought about that picture, Martin. I thought about the picture on the magazine. And I thought about my 7-year-old self who worked for 4 years to enroll myself in English classes, who for 3 years went daily to learn English, who then graduated with honors and taught English as a second language, who had, so many jobs as as a bilingual professional. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was being prepared all this time to make it in the United States. And that vision came back of happy kids with books, with toys, with tennis shoes, with jeans, with everything they needed. And that vision allowed me to get up and get to work. And that's how my blog was born. It was through that vision. And that's why I tell you, I've been through a lot of adversity. That doesn't even scratch the surface to everything that I've been through. But it is not so much the adversity, but how we respond to the adversity and the vision that we're able to forge in the midst of that adversity that helps us move forward. And that's how we're able to turn our pain into a gift, is through allowing ourselves to feel that pain and hold on to that vision. It's not either or. Oh, I love that question. And yes, I do believe that the truth about who we are is so much more than our circumstances. And my mom and dad, even though we lived in Islam, they were intellectuals. They loved books. I remember, my dad belonged to a political party, and they had meetings every Monday in our living room and other living rooms, and I was tagged along, to those places. And I was able to actually meet a political figure. His name is Juan Bosch, and everybody calls him El Profesor, the professor. And he wrote many books, and he actually even consulted with Ernest Hemingway. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't even know who Ernest Hemingway was, but he was one of the most brilliant minds in the Dominican Republic. And my dad, actually told us about Juan Bosch, and that was his mentor, his hero. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, how amazing it is to be an author and to write books and to be on the cover of a book. And his picture was always on the cover of his books. And my mom and my dad loved to read, and they actually got together every Monday and read books together as a whole, and thought about the most brilliant minds and their messages. So that was one thing. The second thing is that eventually I was able to enroll myself not only in English classes but also in typing lessons. And I remember really being just mesmerized and inspired by these quotes that we were actually made to type over and over until we got it right, because our typing instructor, I guess I would call it, but he would give us all these Henry David Thoreau quotes, Ralph Waldo Emerson quotes, Plato, all of these quotable phrases. And they were motivational and inspirational. And I would go to the library and I would actually try to find the books that had these names. And another thing is that also in the landfill, people threw away Reader's Digest
Yeah.
magazines. And so I was, just mesmerized by the quotable quotes. It was called citas citables in Spanish. And I remember that being my favorite section of this, trashed magazine. And actually I joke with people that I had a subscriptions to these magazines because they threw it away every
Yeah.
month. And so I knew that I would, find that, and I loved just reading. And that also, I think, started my love for writing. And writing is how I started to make sense of my life and to find my identity. And the only book that we read cover to cover over and over and that we owned was the Bible. And so I started writing in the blank spaces of those Bibles. It was, writing about my pain, writing about who I thought I was or who I thought I could be. Writing my eulogy was my favorite thing to do, believe it or not. And although that seems now like a dark practice, because I was thinking that I, deserved to die. That was the story that I was told and I believed for a while. And so, but writing my eulogy allowed me to kind of imagine that people cared about me, that I did something while I was alive, that I made a difference, and that a lot of people went to my funeral. So even though it started out as a practice of defeat and disappointment and thinking of myself as someone who didn't belong here, it evolved into something of a vision of who I could be and what people could say my legacy was when I died. And I was only 5 when I started doing this and writing poetry and writing out my feelings and my thoughts, because there were no or very limited safe people I could talk to about how I felt. And I think one thing that you mentioned about being surrounded by the wrong people, sometimes we're surrounded by the right people who don't know what to do in the midst of adversity.
Absolutely.
And so I think, yeah, and so I think I did have people who cared about me. Like my dad has always been my biggest rock. And sometimes, you know, people don't know even what to say or what to do that will work. And research has shown that trauma is not what happens to us. It's not an event. It's actually how we internalize the event that happened. And uh, because we're alone in that pain, it turns into traumatic stress. But when we are supported in that pain, it can turn into traumatic
May
growth.
I
As a
may
matter
I
of,
jump in here,
yeah,
if you may hold
yes,
that thought,
please,
because this is
please.
important. You say trauma is not an event. You also
Yeah,
call yourself a student of pain. Could you marry the two, right? An
yeah,
event that causes you pain and how that is related to the downward trail that eventually leads to suicide and how we can pull ourselves out of that dark hole.
yeah, absolutely. So I really love that. And that's exactly where I was going. I think you read my mind.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because trauma is really an interpretation. And so when we study our interpretation of what's happening, when we become a student of what happens to us, then we can give it a different meaning. Meaning is
Okay.
subjective. And so I'll tell you a story to answer that, because when I was 19, I was already in the capital, going to college, and moved out of the slum. And one day, all of a sudden, I'm going to school. I am transcending everything that I thought was painful and starting a new life. And so I actually get on this car, public transportation, and end up being taken to a remote location where a stranger, mercilessly beat me down. He had a baseball bat as a weapon. He, started to undress and hurt me and assault me in every way possible, physically, emotionally, verbally, and in every single way. And I remember just feeling so demoralized, and he was about to take me somewhere else and murder me. That he informed me of his plans because I was fighting for my life. And so when he goes and turns on the car, it doesn't start. And he tries again, it doesn't start. And he tries again, he doesn't start. He goes around, puts his baseball bat down, you know, lifts the hood of the car. And I felt an I would say unbelievably supernatural strength and a voice that told me get out. And I saw the car locks click and go up, and I understood, okay, so this may be why I couldn't get out before. And I didn't know a lot about cars, but it was like something or someone was guiding me to take every single step to get out of this car. And so I get out of the car and I escape, and he's, caught because he couldn't go anywhere without his car starting. And so I remember just feeling so horrible, because everyone would say, well, this is a miracle. And I didn't see it as a miracle. I saw it as the most horrible thing that happened to me. And the thing is that it was both. It was both. But when someone is in pain, I call this motivational shame. We immediately offer assurance, advice, and affirmation. And we don't often give them presence and space and safety to process their pain.
Break that process
And
down
so,
for us. How do I
yeah,
become
yeah,
more empathetic? Because I think that's where you're going.
yeah, yes, yes. And I can illustrate that with what happened
Mhm.
next. I was walking toward this gas station. That was the first place that, in this um, secluded place, that was the first place I saw was a gas station. I don't know how I managed to walk there. I was covered in blood. This woman comes over, and I feel very ashamed, and I feel like, oh my gosh, she looks like a very rich, and there's a lot of classism in my country. So that immediately I felt that she was going to judge me, and that she was going to say, you're half naked or whatever it was. And I just felt like this shame. And when she comes over to me, she just holds me. She puts a fancy suit jacket on me to cover my nakedness. I feel her pearls on my cheeks. She, caresses the parts of my scalp where I had hair and now it was yanked out of my head. And she doesn't say a word, Martin. She gave me silence. Silence. Not what happened, not it's gonna be okay, not this happened for a reason, just pure silence. And she held me like a mother holds her newborn child. I felt this unconditional love, and that gave me safety. And then I was able to just cry in the arms of this strange woman, and that gave me space. Silence, safety, and space. Those are the three pieces of what I call the ministry of
Mm-hmm.
presence. When we give someone that, they are able to feel that there's an empathetic witness. And when we have an empathetic witness, we don't we don't feel the trauma. We feel the pain, but we feel hope in our pain. And that's what I always tell people. Hold them and hold your tongue. Hold them and hold your tongue. And hold them could be just listen to them on the phone. It doesn't have to be a physical holding. It's holding the space so that person knows what you are going through matters. I'm not going to minimize your pain. And this is something that you probably love, this framework of the three deadly D's: dismissing, downplaying, or denying the pain. And we do that to ourselves, we do that to others, like, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, don't cry. Oh, it'll get better. Oh, it's gonna be okay.
Why do
And
we do
even
that though?
2 year old, oh, because we're not comfortable with pain. It really stirs things. We want to be empathetic, but we've been told to suppress our own pain. So we hand people a tissue when they're crying because we just can't stand it. And you probably can appreciate this because, I have brothers and they say like nothing breaks them down like seeing a woman cry. Like they just have to come and fix it. Like, what can I do? How do I protect you? And the thing is that presence, not positivity, is what we need in the midst of pain. And it is normal and it's coming from a good place that we want to solve it. So don't, we don't need to, we don't need more shame. We don't need to shame ourselves for not knowing what to do. Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better, right? And so when someone's in pain, let's not be positive. Let's be present. Let's not try to ease or fix the pain. Let's try to be with that person in their pain. And then what happens is, scientifically, the amygdala, the place of our brain, the almond-shaped emotional center of our brain, gets calmed with validation. So we have executive functioning access now. So what happens is, when something bad happens or that we perceive to be bad, then we turn on that brain function of fight or flight or freeze or fawn. There are many other ways, but fight or flight response. And we are in survival mode because that's the function of our brain, is to survive. And so we are stopped. And when we receive that space and someone listens to us and we feel seen, safe, and supported, our amygdala calms down, and now we can go to the prefrontal cortex and make a rational
Talking
decision.
about
Not a
the
decision.
process of how the brain processes pain, immigrants, for me at least, the way I understand immigrants, we're always running from something or we are running to something, right? We're
Yes.
running from the pain of conflict in our society or politics that we do not
Mhm.
agree on or poor education, disease, on and on and on, or we are running to places where there is more opportunity because our ambition drives us in that direction. In the process of running, um, some of us go through really traumatic experiences, and
Yeah.
so in that pain, immigrants are so resilient that for me we are able to overcome the pain, but I'm not sure we address the pain. And
Yeah.
so from that point of carrying pain with you that haunts you down the line in the process of how you make decisions or in the process of how you relate to people. And I've had guests in this show that have accomplished so much in life, but they have not addressed their pain. I remember having a conversation with a gentleman here that lives in London. Then he was 45 years old, had accomplished so much, and had touched over 300 million lives across the globe. But when we started talking about his childhood trauma, he had a block. He could not express that because he had never confronted that pain. And this is where now I
Mm.
need you to step up and walk immigrants through the process of looking within and inside of us, and how we can use that pain to, one, give us freedom, relieve that pain, but learn to become more empathetic toward those that we are relating to.
Oh, that is so good, Martin. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing these conversations to light, because it is stories like those that illustrate exactly what the path is moving forward, that it's going to help us to have holistic success in our
Right.
life. And I really love what you mentioned, because the thing is that pain pushes us, vision pulls
Mm-hmm.
us. And so that is the beautiful journey of an immigrant. For me, it was the vision of having a family of my own, and I really think that, and that's how we started the conversation, that we understand that we bring a lot of ambition, but we also bring a lot of trauma. And so when we don't address our pain, guess what happens? It gets passed down. I always say that we need to transform our trauma so that we don't transmit it. And yeah, the thing is that we might give our children and our families a better life in terms of economic outlook, in terms of opportunities, but epigenetics, this and neuroscience tells us that our trauma is passed down genetically. And when we live in a subconscious way, running from pain and depression is means that you're pressing down your pain, then we are modeling that to our children. And you've heard this before, I'm sure: do as I say, not as I
Of
do.
course.
Yeah. And that just doesn't work. And so if we want really true freedom for the people in our lives, because we think that we're okay, we think that it's fine, we achieved what we wanted, but the truth is that we are passing down a blueprint for
Mm-hmm.
suppression. And and when you said earlier, like going down a spiral of suicide or depression or anxiety, a lot of times we end up driving our children further down, and our grandchildren. And I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
why. Number one, we went through so much. So I grew up in a slum. My children didn't grow up in a slum, but they are carrying those seeds within them,
Explain that.
right? And well, there was a study, a longitudinal study with survivors of the
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust. And like you said, they achieved great things. They escaped the Holocaust. Like, what an achievement, right? They escaped the Holocaust. They came to the United States. They made themselves a name and a fortune, and a great life for themselves and their family. And when tested for PTSD, or post traumatic stress disorder, they fared well. However, their children and grandchildren were more affected than the people who escaped the Holocaust and had symptoms, and also, I would say, indicators as if they would have lived the Holocaust recently, because epigenetics shows that it is passed
Mm-hmm.
down. So they're going to need to help someone process that pain. And so let's pretend this didn't happen, but I'm just making an illustration to explain what you asked. Let's pretend that, I go through this horrible situation. My children have not gone through that situation. And so, but they are suffering anxiety and depression over something that we consider minimal. Let's say, oh, I don't have any friends at school. And then I go, well, but you didn't live in a slum. So you have it really well. You have it good. You have a good life. You live in a house made of bricks.
Minimizing their pain.
And yeah, exactly. And so actually, our generations that are growing are more sensitive because they've been invalidated since they were born. 2-year old, scrapes her knee or his knee, and they're like, oh, you're okay, honey. Don't cry. It's fine. But it is not fine. That person is in pain. And so we teach our children that because they're not going through what we went through, that they're growing up in a different country with a different economic status, in a different situation, that their pain doesn't matter. And so we need to shift that, because they're not only suffering that pain, they're also reacting. 90% of that reaction is coming from the pain that we passed
Is
down.
it because we are traumatized and we carry our own pain, or is it because we are too distracted by the presence of life?
Both. We are carrying that within
Okay.
ourselves, and also we are too distracted to sit with the people in our life and truly listen to what's
So,
going on.
Dr.
Because
Elayna, just
yeah,
hold that thought because I want to connect these two things together, right?
yes,
You
yes,
talked about pain pushes us and vision pulls us. Okay, so
yeah,
can we connect the two dots?
yes, absolutely. So when we are being pushed, it's like you said, running from something. And so that we give attention to that. That is our reality. And we're triggered all the time because we don't want that. And I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's happened to me. And anything threatens my livelihood, and I say, I don't want to go back to living in XYZ. And so you act with your amygdala. You don't act with your prefrontal cortex, because you're acting from fight or flight. And so we're stuck if we don't process that, and we don't, I call it the alchemy of pain. We don't transform that trauma into something positive, like a gift. We don't go within. That's why we need to go within, because if we go within, we process it, then we don't have it inside of us anymore. But when we process it and then we focus on our vision, we have executive functioning. We're thinking about our vision, we're thinking about the positive things that can happen, and we can be present in the moment and not triggered about the things that we don't want anymore, or that we don't want to be like our grandpa who grew up in the depression, and we don't want to be like our mother who mothered 17 children in the wilderness. I mean, I don't care what it is. When we focus on that vision, we're always going to be beat up. I mean, with that pain, we're always going to be beat up by that pain, because we haven't made peace with it. But when we make peace with our pain, then we can only live from vision. And basically, when that pain comes back, we know who we are. We're rooted in our identity of who we truly are. Like you said, we don't believe those lies about ourselves, that we don't believe that we are destined to go back. We are looking forward. And then our children catch on. The people around us catch on. If you're a leader, your team catches on. If you're a teacher, your students catch on. If you're with animals, even your animals will catch on. So it doesn't even matter whether you're a parent or not. It matters that you're around people, and your ability to respond in the face of adversity rather than react from your amygdala. It's going to make a difference in every relationship and in every project that you're
So give us the tools.
Oh, well, I have one very, very cool one that's really easy and
Oh,
free. And it's called Date Your Pain. And so it is a daily ritual that I've been doing for a long time. It was inspired by a coma, actually, that I was in a coma for 8 days. And what I figured out is that, I had to sit still. I had to be still to process my trauma. And so you get still. It only takes 2 minutes. It takes 60 seconds, 90 seconds of processing, and 30 seconds of validation. So here's how it goes. First, you get still and close your eyes if that helps you. And then you see is the number one. See as in SEE. I know my accent sometimes.
You're in the
People
right
think it's,
space here. No
yeah,
judgments.
yeah. Some people are like, oh, is that the letter C? Or no, it's SEE. So C is the first step. You see something that bothers you, whether it's from the past or from the present. It's a situation that's stressing, distressing, or traumatic. And sometimes, if it's like a big trauma with a capital T or a little trauma with a little t, it's going to take several times depending on where it falls in that spectrum. And so, first you see that, and then you find in your body where you're storing that trauma, because trauma stays in our body and actually is the cause of many diseases that we suffer from and pain. So let's pretend that I'm closing my eyes and I see a moment in which someone was yelling at me. I'm gonna call that to the front right now, to the forefront, and I see that situation, I see that moment, and I see that vision. I start to scan my body, and that's the number 2 step, is sense. So I sense it right here in my throat right now. That's where I sense it. So see, sense, and then say. So I look at that person, me at that age, in that stage. I was, in the one that I'm looking at right now, I was 26 years old, around 26, 27 years old. And then I say a validating thing to that person, that version of me. And I say, this is what I'm going to say. Let's see. I think she needs to hear, Elayna, you are strong. Elayna, thank you for your wisdom. Elayna, your voice matters. Elayna, you don't deserve to be treated that way. Elayna, you are more than that. I take a deep breath and I shake it off, and I see, sense, and say. And I continue to that every single day. And it could be something that happened yesterday, something that happened earlier today. And I just validate that person, not by saying it's going to be okay, but by acknowledging that person is the truth about that person. And I'm so glad that you said that, which was the opposite in this case of what that person was yelling at that Elayna of that time. And to validate, no, you're strong and you don't deserve this, and this is not your fault. And those are some validating things. So getting really fluent in the language of validation, and what happens is that when we date our pain and we validate, that's where date comes from. It's from validate. um, I'm such a dork.
No,
You
no.
have
I
no
mean,
idea.
the dorkiness is actually really practical and
Yeah,
amazing.
thank
And
you.
so I I'm gonna get into the dating your pain, right? Because
Yeah.
that speaks to me. I have a friend who's a phenomenal guy, just a profound human being, but he has no relationship with his son. Not
Mm,
that the son has done anything wrong, and not that he has done anything wrong to the son, but the son has tried so hard to reach out to him, to spend time with him, to open up to him, but he's shut down.
mm,
And we all around him wonder how is it that he is so friendly to everybody else, he is
Yeah.
so loving to everybody else, including his other children, but to his son there's a block. And so we only can relate to not having the technical capabilities to understand what's going on. We all, as his friends, say there has to be something that happened to him in the past to have this
Yeah.
block where he has not been able to build a relationship with his child. So
Yeah.
if he's thinking, he's listening to our conversation and he's taking notes and he's saying, okay, I need to date my pain, I need to see my pain, I need to find the pain somewhere in my body, and I need to validate that pain. Once he goes that through that process, what's the reconciliation? How does he and many others who are immigrants struggling in pain, once they identify the pain, how do they confront the pain to bridge or build the relationship they're missing?
Yeah, I love that follow-up question, because the thing is that the reason why we are carrying those wounds and those blocks is because number one, we don't acknowledge them. And number two, when we are in relationship with someone else, we are not able to relate to their pain because we're blocking our own. So we're harsh, or we're triggered, or we don't have the ability to validate them. As we validate our pain, we dissolve it because we access that functioning, and we're looking at our pain with a different version of ourselves. And actually research shows that when you talk to yourself in third person, you are accessing a different side of yourself that is actually going to heal that inner part that is wounded. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm a practitioner of IFS
Mhm.
therapy. And so, looking at those wounded parts as our actual self, our self is love, connection. It is clear. It is more than what we see with those parts, but we identify with those parts of ourselves. So there's obviously in your friend's story, there's obviously something that is triggering him that he's not willing to acknowledge about himself. So as he starts to acknowledge, it starts to go away. It's like when you say, I am afraid of something, and then you face it, and it is not as you imagined it. The mystery is gone. My daughter, who just finished writing her book, she's 11 years old. She tells the story of her tooth, her first tooth, right? She was terrified. I had to, just tell her like all kinds of things to be able to sit her down and get this tooth out that was ready to come out. And she says, once she sat down and we took it out, it didn't even hurt. And now every time she gets a tooth out, she's 11, so we've been through the process a few times. She knows that it's not going to be the end of the world. So once we start dating our pain consistently, we know that we can face those places, and we can find support. That now that I admitted it to myself, I can say, you know what, son, or someone else who is a safe person, I thought about this. I started dating my pain, and these are the things that I haven't been honest with myself about that still bother me. And maybe it's a counselor, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a journal, starting writing that. And as you start to shed that pain, what's in the place of that? Love and connection. And the separation wall starts to melt down, and then you can reach out. Definitely as a parent, I think it's our responsibility to reach out to the children. They are always going to be our children. It is not a reciprocal relationship. And so I feel that once you do the inner work, because if you're still wounded and it's still coming from a place of hardship, then it is not going to be a good bond. But once you start to do that work within yourself, then reach out to that other person and say, I'm willing to work on this. It's not gonna be perfection, and I can relate to that with my own mother. How we have a beautiful relationship right now, but even in the beginning, it is there can be friction, there can be skepticism, there can be that sense of doubt whether it's going to work or not. So it's going to take effort, but when we do our inner work, then it's just going to start to ripple across, just like when we don't do it. So when we transform our trauma, we stop transmitting it, and then we can transcend it so we can thrive.
So hold that thought for me because it's important into where we're going next. Immigrants come from a bunch of different cultures, and especially when we're migrating to the West, where in the West it's easier for the cultures to relate, to speak about the torment we are going through. Unlike when you come from the East, where you're supposed to deal with it yourself, or when you come from places like Africa, where it may be deemed in certain cultures as childish to talk about your pain, or unmanly to express your vulnerability, right? Where do we find the balance? Or to say the middle, so that I can start to date my pain without the guilt of I am failing my religious beliefs, I am failing my place as a man and as a head of a household, or as a leader, on and on and on.
So I think, there's so much stigma, and I think that's why 700,000 people die by suicide every year. Because I think there's so much stigma in my culture is the same thing. I'm Afro-Latina because in the Dominican Republic we have, very strong African roots, and I have myself done my DNA test, and I'm, 34% African. And so strength in our culture is defined by being stoic and overcoming. Like you use that word, overcoming. I don't think that any of us ever overcome any pain. I think overcoming is an ing, is a journey where we're peeling off layers, and especially because with epigenetics, like we spoke before, our ancestors were enslaved. We carry all of that.
That's a lot of pain.
Yeah, we carry all of that. Like we actually carry a lot more than we think.
And
it is not only our story.
And does the sex of the person matter? Does the woman carry more pain and for lack of a better term, express her pain more violently compared to the man, and vice versa?
It matters because we're socialized that way. So I think that the reason why, and I'm a victim of assault, like I told you, and all of that, the reason why male are more prone to hurt women is because they don't process their pain. They're not allowed to cry, they're not allowed to be angry, they're not allowed to say what they feel, and so they're carrying it, and then they burst out. It just comes out because they haven't processed it, or they've been treated like their pain doesn't matter. So that is a correlation. I think that men need to heal a lot more than women. In my opinion, I see that men are not allowed to ever be present with their pain, and that's why we have a lot of men who hurt. Now women...
Dr. Elayna, are you saying men cannot heal in their quietness or in their pride?
Yeah, because it's not really pride, it's just it's shame that has been passed on. So So there's nothing wrong with a man. It's not something that they were designed to do. It's something that has been programmed, from the beginning of time, that if you're a man, to be strong, you have to be aggressive, and you have to not feel pain, and you have to just move on and not process that pain. You cannot cry. And so that's what, is an infection that has been contagious for the beginning of time. Because when you think of a male baby, do they do something different than the female babies? They both cry. That's the sign of life. If you have a 2-year-old and they scrape their knee, the boy baby is gonna cry, and the boy, the girl baby is gonna cry too. But we are socialized to say, oh, you're a boy, boys are not supposed to cry. You're a girl, girls are not supposed to yell, or they're not supposed to be angry. And so that is why we are different in how we express our pain. But then girls are told that they are too sensitive and they can't be leaders because they are not rational. So it's all stories, like you said, that we've been told that are not true about ourselves. We are both designed to feel pain, to express our pain, and to express it in a healthy way. We need to process it so that we are not hurting each other, so that we are getting along with each other, so that we are present with each other. And that is possible for both genders. And yes, we're different. Our brains are different. That's true. Biologically we're different, but emotionally we can be together in our pain. We can honor each other. We can validate each other. And we can definitely, be there for a man who's crying, or for a woman who's crying, or for, to be present with a male who's angry and a woman who's angry. And so they don't act in an unhealthy and toxic way with that sadness and that anger.
So I have observed, and I am not the professional here, so I need your help, that for anything significant to change, one, I have to be present. Two, I have to be intentional about it. And three, I have to be consistent to see the change happen. In that process, there is a lot of me changing my story. The story I may have in my head of the person I was compared to the person I want to become. And I'm really thinking, just going back to what you have said, it's really based on the dating your pain, right? So if I need to change my story, to be able to adopt this new story that eventually empowers me, what is the power of storytelling, and how do we use storytelling to bridge the stigma of suicide?
Beautiful question, because storytelling for me is the tool that has been used from the beginning of time. No matter what philosophy or religion or spiritual path you have, everything starts with a story that heals, that teaches, that moves civilization forward. And story has been proven scientifically to, especially writing a story, to heal, because you're able to process, and it's a ritual that allows you to take what's inside of you. Remember what I had in my throat, what I felt in my throat, I'm gonna then put it on the paper. And so as you start to write, and this is what happened to me instinctively when I was 5 years old and I started to think about dying, right? I started with the purpose to just kind of get it out and have a confidant on the blank spaces of the Bible. but then it turned into a vision, it turned into a different story, it turned into myself seeing myself in a different light. And so that's the possibility of writing the story. You write it in the when you write it in the first person, it allows you to vent. When you write it in the third
Mhm.
person, it allows you to validate. So I always recommend to have an event and validate session with yourselves by writing. Now, second thing is when you write a transformational story, then now you're taking that story and allowing your story to help someone else. And in that, you find a gift for yourself and for others. That's why my book series is called The Gifts of Pain. And so, with regard to the suicide, suicide is a response to feeling alone and hopeless, like there's no way out and there's no possible other solution. And there's so much stigma about that, but there's nothing wrong with suicidal thoughts because you didn't create them. So there's nothing wrong with you. If you're feeling that, you didn't create them. They came to you because there's a part inside of you that wants to protect you from the pain that you're
May I
feeling.
jump in
So
here?
there's nothing, yeah, yeah,
I find it mind blowing that a 5-year-old would have suicidal thoughts. Like, until you say that today, for me, I never imagined a 5-year-old would be in that place.
wow.
So, where you're going, before I said hold that thought, can you go there and address where do suicidal thoughts come from?
Yeah. So they come from a part of ourselves that's trying to protect us. So there are three types of parts within ourselves. There's the ones that protect, there's the ones that want to escape or fix something, and then there are the ones that are wounded and are carrying all the pain. So there's a part inside of me that says, well, Elayna, you've been through enough already. Like, let's just save you from all this pain because it's not worth it anymore. No matter what you're going through, there's always pain, and we're tired, we're done, there's no other way. So that part is simply trying to lovingly protect me by saying, let's just end it, let's just not even try. And that part, I actually give that part a voice through my poetry. And I start writing down what that part wants to say, and I talk to that part of me. And I say, okay, I understand and it's true. You're right. It's been too much and I am done. Is there another way that we could do this? Right? Is there another way that we could do this? And so suicidal thoughts come from a part of you that carries so much pain, has seen you carry, tried many avenues, carry so much burden, and is trying to protect you. There's nothing wrong with you. You simply are focusing on that part, but you have other parts. You have other parts. And you also have a self. You also have executive functioning right here. And so what happens is that when you validate, you don't allow yourself to get there because you're validating those parts and they're not so loud anymore because you're giving them a voice. And so there's an indigenous story that says there are two wolves inside of you. One that's afraid and angry, and it's, really suffering and all of that. And there's another one who is like positivity and light and love and connection. And the boy asked the man that's saying this, he's like, which one wins from these two wolves that are in a battle inside of your head? And he said, the one you feed. That's the one that wins.
Okay.
And so And so we basically understand I have these thoughts coming. Mine came from basically hearing people in my life say that. They said I shouldn't have been born. They said I am a waste of space. They said I shouldn't be alive. I can't do anything right. You know, basically, I internalize those thoughts. Sometimes people don't say it, but we interpret that. Sometimes they just come spontaneously because that part of ourselves is trying to protect us. And then we validate that part of ourselves, and then we find other ways through writing, through poetry, through expressive art, and through safe people. And when we don't have safe people, we can be a safe person to ourselves.
That's fascinating. So, I I want to go back from a couple of things you said, and you talked about eulogizing yourself from the age of 5. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, really, it came down to something that I profoundly understand, which is journaling. So, most of us understand the power of journaling. But if I take you back to that place of sadness, if I take you back to that place where you believe you were you eulogizing yourself, were you
Mm-hmm.
actually writing your eulogy, or and which would be coming from the place of pain and stay in pain, or were you journaling and interpreting it to something else but really finding therapy through writing?
Yeah. So it all started, with writing negative affirmations, if you will. Like, yeah, it's true. I don't belong here. I'm, not good enough. And it's true that I'm ugly. It's true that I'm a good for nothing. It's true that I can't do anything right. And kind of, starting to say those things. And then it evolved to, if I died, this is what it would sound. And I always heard it in the radio, like, in this city of San Jose de Ocoa, little Elayna Fernandez has died, and her remains are being, her remains are in this funeraria, like funeral center, and, kind of like an
Okay.
announcer in the third
Mhm.
person. And then it evolved to, and, her, these people attended her funeral, or this many people attended her funeral. And then it continued with, if somebody spoke at my funeral, what would they say?
I can start
And
to
in the
relate now
beginning,
that you say that. Now I can really relate because
yeah,
growing up too, we used to have those radio. Thank God we don't have no radio anymore. Announcements, and
yeah,
in reality, now that you go there, I am going back there and I can remember how depressing that was. But keep going.
yeah, yes. And so, it evolved from, like, nobody attended her funeral to her dad attended her funeral. And then I'm like, oh yeah, my dad cares about me. And then her teacher and her dad attended her funeral. And then I started to see different people who attended my funeral. And then what would my dad say? And that's the eulogy portion. Like, my dad would,
Dr.
yeah.
Liana, children have a way to find
Mm-hmm.
resilience. And so I have a feeling this is where you're going, but walk us through, how did you find resilience?
Well, you know, I found it inside of me. I found it in my true self. However, as a child, you don't choose your circumstances. And so I can tell you that it was through people like my dad, people like my teacher, who saw me for who I truly am, who validated me, even though they didn't have a concept of what validation was, but who said affirmations about me. And so it is a combination, because as children only know what they're told and what they live and what they
Mhm.
interpret. And and so those are two pieces. And the third and most important piece for me, it was I was writing in the Bible.
Okay.
you know so I was actually also reading my Bible, like when I started to find places to write. And so, I know that not everybody believes in the Bible, but whatever it is for you, believing in something greater and a greater power. Because for me, believing in God and reading the words of God in the Bible, for me, was a place of resilience. So it's a trifecta, right? There's up there, there's in here, and there's out here. And sometimes, you know this and this is enough. When you're making a connection of that vision, I feel that I was guided from that age to find those things. And my gift, I think, is to trust. Okay, yeah, if I learn this language, I can have this life, which turned out to be the life for my
Mhm.
children. Yes, if I write this eulogy, I can find the answer. Yes, and it is so much better when we can find evidence in the physical realm and in our circumstances, and to find that friend that says, you know what? Yeah, you've been through a lot. Yeah, this is hard. Yeah, of course, just cry. Just cry and vent, and and that will help us process it a lot sooner than when we feel alone, because it is a trifecta. But yes, I can tell you that inside of us, there's a seed for transformation, where we can turn our pain into our biggest gift.
You see me sitting here and easy, because what you just said is easy, and I don't want to be gender insensitive for women to do. And I want to say that thinking it has much to do with their biology and ability to be more empathetic than men are. So, how do men cope in this scenario? How do men sit together and become vulnerable to each other or to other women?
Yeah, I think the gender divide is caused by focusing more on our differences than than on our
But
similarities.
that's also what
And I
empowers
always
us.
say, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We can focus on both, not more on this, not more on that, but equally on both. And I always say that pain is the common thread of humanity. Feeling pain is what makes us human. And so I feel that, there's a lie that we've been told about men, that they are not sensitive. And I think it's because we've been told that. But I think tapping into that which is already in you. And I think dating your pain is a good start. But I think also identifying and naming our feelings. So as a man, you've been told not to feel. Make it a defiant act to every day identify what you're feeling in every situation. If you're sitting in traffic, what are you feeling? If you're in the board meeting about to do a presentation, what are you feeling? And also to identify what other people feel, to be more in tune. So because it's like a language, to learn English, I had to be immersed in English. I had to look for English programs and English songs and English uh, people who spoke English and English books. And so to be fluent in the language of emotion, I need to be immersed in emotion. And so I would say start by naming what people are feeling and being aware, because that's already inside of you. You were designed as a feeling being, male or female. That's why you are attracted to the woman, or that's why you love your daughter or son or your puppy or whatever. It's because you feel those
Mhm.
feelings, and the other feelings are still there dormant as well. So the pain is there. That's, you cried at birth when they spanked your bottom, right? That was a sign of life. And we live a flat-lined existence when we don't allow ourselves to feel our pain.
So I'm gonna play the devil's advocate, and really for men, right?
Please.
Because being in the business world, every time I go out and I close a beautiful deal, I am triumphant that particular day. I am excited. And then I look at professionals in sports that every time they win a game, they score, they are excited. So they're expressing their emotion, right? And when I see when we fall in love, we get excited and we want to tell our dude bros about the girl I met, right? And on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And even when our women carry our babies, we want to talk about their pregnancy. So
Mhm.
to a certain extent, I want to say men are vulnerable,
Yeah.
that we do share our joy and we do share our wins.
Yes.
So why is it difficult for us to express our pain?
Shame and stigma.
And how do they
You know,
overcome
I think
shame and stigma? How do we live a fulfilled life where we don't feel like we're less than and we don't feel like we are not men enough, and overcome the shame of or the stigma we may have?
yeah. So, you know, it's very rooted in society. So it definitely takes a magic wand, which we don't have. However, it starts with the person in the mirror. When you were talking about the wins in the sports, I think of the Dominican baseball players, and they're always dancing and
Hmm.
swinging. And but then I thought about the tennis players breaking their rackets,
Hmm.
right? And being criticized in the media for doing that. And yet it takes courage, right? It takes courage to say, to break that racket. It takes courage, and I'm saying, okay, rackets are expensive, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but it is a way for these athletes to shake it off and to say, I'm upset, I didn't have a good game, a good match, or
Is it
whatever
okay
that
to
is.
express
And
pain?
then it is okay to express pain. It is okay. And it starts with us giving ourselves permission. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an imaginary permission slip to anybody who's watching or
Hmm.
listening, and saying, you have my permission to feel your pain and to express it in a healthy way. When you express it in a healthy way, it's going to it prevents you from expressing it in an unhealthy
Does
way.
breaking the racket in public part of expressing your pain in a healthy way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm glad you say
Yeah.
that because I have been around men who expressed your pain, and I'm gonna start with one that I absolutely love, my father,
Yeah.
who in his young years used to express his pain by banging things. For example, if you disappointed him or annoyed him and he was not able to do anything physical to you, he would bang the door and walk out, right? Um, and then I've met this other beautiful man that has been an absolute treasure in my life, and he punches things, punches drywalls in his house. He's a great
Yeah.
guy, but he just
Oh,
has a weird way of expressing his pain. And so that's where do we have that fine line of this is pain that is going to cause other people pain when I express it, and this
yeah.
is pain that is okay to express in public.
Yeah. I like that question because, when my um, 2-year-old daughter, she's 22 now, she was really angry because her dad left and she didn't know what to do with that. And she was really angry, and she, was very violent with me. And, it was really getting out of control. And so I gave her a punching corner where she had a pillow that she could, get it out. And she had some other calming things that she could look at. So, because, it's not only getting out the anger physically, but it's also the mindfulness. So there was a little bottle with a little liquid that turned in different places that she could look at to calm herself down. Self down is about taking breaths also. So there are many, I don't recommend the drywall because that's destructive,
Of course.
right? So and the racket is a little destructive, like I said, but it's better than him going into the other team and hurting the winners and the champions, right? So it is definitely a mindful space, but I think as we start to evolve from the racket, from the breaking the
Mhm.
racket, we could use the power of our breath. We could use the power of our mindfulness. We could even take in the middle of that. It takes 2 minutes to date your pain. Find it in your body. You don't even need to recall it because it's happening. Find it in your body and validate it. And and it takes a few seconds just to do that. So there are stages. It's not that we stay in the breaking the racket
Mhm.
forever. I think that there are stages in which that happens, and eventually there was no need for that punching corner. There's no need for a punching bag because we have allowed ourselves to be that way in that moment, and we're not hurting anyone, we're not hurting ourselves, and we're simply finding a way to do that. And people break plates in a wedding for fun.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It is. It's
So
become a business, actually.
yeah, so you can break a wedding, break a plate one day, and just say, this is what I can do about the situation and what will get it out. So just being mindful that you're not hurting yourself, you're not hurting other people, and that what you're breaking is not a plate that was given passed down through generations, and now you lost a family heirloom. So a calculated way to do that is fine, and it's a symbol and a ritual that that it that there are ways in which you can have that control that you felt that you lost. And so yeah, it's a journey, and it takes a lot of, like you said,
Mhm.
intentionality, but it is possible to transcend whatever it is that we have in there, as long as we get it out in an intentional and purposeful way, and that we know what our end goal is. Because again, it goes back to that vision. Who am I going to be if I break this racket? Who am I going to be? What is possible for me if I break this plate or punch this punching bag? And maybe who I'm going to be is a calmer person for the people in my home, and that's worth it.
Absolutely. I have to plug you in here because it's the perfect spot for us to do that. So, tell our listeners where they can find your books, where they can find your work, and where they can get a hold of you on social media.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, my blog is called thepositivemom.com, and all of my social media platforms and all the ways to contact me are on thepositivemom.com slash EF, like Elayna Fernandez. And I'm on social media at the positive mom everywhere. So that's kind of easy.
Why did you choose Positive Mom?
Well, when I was in that moment that I told you
Mhm.
earlier about, with I didn't know what to do in the United States to survive with my two little ones, I actually could not come up with what to do. I couldn't come up with a to-do list. I thought like I could do this, I could do that, I could do the other thing, and what came up was that vision that I held on to as a child. And I for you know I thought about this Bible verse about that talked about the Beatitudes.
Mhm.
Like, and for me, it was the first time that I made a to-be list, which I make every day. I make a to-be list. I don't do to-do list. I make a to-be
Mhm.
list. And in my to-be list, the first thing that I wrote was be a positive mom. And it was be resilient, be empathetic, be compassionate, be a writer, be, I had all of these things that I could be. And the first thing was be a positive mom, and that's how my blog started.
Okay. So you just gave us a tool just like that, like it was not important. And so my job here is to serve immigrants. And when I catch a nugget, I want to make sure everybody gets it, right? So talk to us about the power of, for me, usually it is a to-do list. Now you just messed me up completely, right? So for me, it's a to-do list. Yours is a to-be list. Okay, equip us, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my to be list, I list all of the qualities that I want to embody in that day. And usually it's after I date my pain that I write my to be list, because I know who I want to be for the people in my life or for my clients, the people that I'm going to be interacting with. And it came from, being in a coma and not being able to do anything. Remember, my body was down here, I was up here, and I realized the value of just being. I couldn't breathe on my own. I had oxygen masks, my I had a lung that was dripping blood with a chest tube. I had 19 broken bones, brain injuries, and yet I was still a valuable being. As a matter of fact, it's the first time I felt so valuable because everyone was gathered, saying how much they love me and crying and suffering for me. And so who we are is more powerful, more important than what we do. And I let my to-be list guide what I'm going to do that day and how I'm going to do it. And the how is powerful, because I could even help you, Martin. I could say, oh, let me, clean your fingernails, since I just saw your fingernails. Clean your fingernails for you. And I could be like very gentle cleaning your fingernails, or be resentful cleaning your fingernails. So who we are is going to be expressed in how we do what we do, what energy, what expression we bring into what we do, and who I want to be every day. It is an unfolding process, and I call forth those qualities that are going to help me show up in the way that I want to show up, so that on that eulogy, whenever it happens, it's not my time yet, even though I've been to heaven and back. In that eulogy, I am truly proud of what's said.
So your to-be list that you set every morning is a very intentional, deliberate way, at least in my observation, for you to date your pain.
Yes. Yes.
You're not reacting, you're purposeful about what you want your day to be. The issue we have about one of the things I care most and I love to address on this show is suicide is about reacting to pain. Make it really simple so that any immigrant that's paying attention learns from you, because it's a phenomenal tool. Dating your pain, your to-be list, how do we easily and quickly do it on a daily basis?
Yeah. So dating your pain is free. It takes 2 minutes, and I follow it up with journaling about what I experienced. So it takes about 5 more minutes, and then it just takes 3 more minutes to do a to-be list. And I like to list five qualities that I'm going to embody that day. And so in just 10 minutes, so just set your alarm clock for 10 minutes earlier, in just 10 minutes you have a practice that will help you start brand new, let go of something from the past, and really process something that it's out of the way, and then call forth a new vision on how you're going to live your day, how you're going to show up for the people in your life, in your family, in your work, in your community. And so if you do that every single day, it is a cleansing process. I call it the alchemy of pain. And you're transforming your pain, but you're also creating new neural pathways that are fine tuning who you are into who you're really meant to be. And if you think about the sculpture process, like even if you start out as this rock, you're modeling, you're chipping away things that are going to reveal who you truly are in inside, who you're truly meant to be in this world. And it's not coming from a place of
Mm-hmm.
perfection, it's coming from a place of purification.
Can it come from a place of gratitude?
Absolutely. Yes.
So talk to us about gratitude.
Well, there are two types of gratitude. There's invalidating gratitude, and then there's real
Oh, wow,
gratitude.
that's new.
Because
Invalidating
yeah,
gratitude.
yes. So invalidating gratitude is being saying that you're grateful for something even though you know that you're not
Okay. Oh, wow.
yet.
Okay.
Yes. And it's like an affirmation as well. There are affirmations that are invalidating. And the thing is that if I'm bypassing my pain and saying that I'm grateful for something because it's gonna lead to something
Mm-hmm.
else. I'm just bypassing my pain and I'm not allowing myself to be frustrated or irritated or disappointed or whatever it is I'm feeling about that. However, gratitude, true gratitude, is really something that you feel in your body, that it causes you joy. It causes you to even if you're not a smiler, I'm a smiler, so I immediately smile,
Yeah.
but it causes you to feel a transformation, a transmutation of your energy. And so when I think about my 5-year-old daughter, Olivia, I stand up a little straighter, right? Because she is in that age where everything is magical and mommy is the most important person in her world, and he draws her and me every day together holding hands. And that's magical for me, and I'm so grateful
Yep.
for that. However, if I'm going through a challenge, I can't just like skip to being, oh, I'm grateful for this challenge because I know that it will lead to something amazing. No, I'm not grateful for it yet. I'm studying my pain. I'm a student of that pain. I'm going to find ways in which that pain is serving me. When I find it after I become a student of that pain, then I can be grateful for it. So we got to process it. We got to honor the system here and not bypass steps. And so that's why I wanted to make that distinction, because we know that pain will lead to something amazing. Yeah, intellectually we know that, but we have to feel it in our body. It has to be electric for us. We have to feel that energy in order to be truthful. Otherwise, we're invalidating ourselves. We're downplaying, dismissing, and denying our pain. And that's just going to cause dysfunction, disease, and disconnection.
So the world today is struggling with one really major hurdle. And that major hurdle actually comes from what I would consider a really good place. And moms are on the forefront of this battle. Um, but I'm not sure they're winning. It feels to me like they're losing.
Mm.
Speaking from the experience of a positive mom, and I don't mean to be ironical, how should immigrant mothers confront the issue of social media, the negativity with it, and their children?
Oh my goodness, this is so good because social media is one of those things that is a bypass. I just talked about
Mhm.
bypassing. This is another bypassing because it is a bypass for connection. So, I have so many followers, hundreds of thousands of followers, and sometimes I feel alone because connection doesn't happen through a screen.
Mhm.
And we can start that connection. I really love what we're doing right now, speaking face to face. I can see your expression, you can see mine, you can see my body language. But if I were to just look at a photo on your LinkedIn, and we're connected on LinkedIn, and see your profile, that is not true connection. That is a seed for connection, but it is not true connection. True connection is what's happening right
Mhm.
now. It's a conversation, a deep conversation. And so I think that, we talked about suicide, we talked about the numbers in suicide, and suicide is the leading cause of death for young children and young adulthood, right? And so yes, as mothers, we're not winning that battle at all because we are not present with our children enough, and we are allowing these devices to raise them, and these devices to take the place of our nurturing. And we're more disconnected with our teens than ever. And our teens feel more alone and unsupported than ever. Number one, we're invalidating their pain. Number two, they find validation through social media, which is a counterfeit. So I think that, I can't say I have all the answers of parenthood. I would never claim that. I'm still learning myself. And because I have young adults as children, I can tell you that the key lies in number one, having a balance of true connection with our children. And number two is allowing our children to connect in person, connect with nature, be more in nature. Absolutely. That's something that I was poor in everything else, but I was rich in
Mhm.
nature when I was growing up. Where did we go to fetch water? To the river. Where did we play? Outside. I mean, it was dirty, but we our feet were on the ground. We were eating from the tree. That has been lost. So that's number one. Number two, play. Let's play with our children, and actually it's good for our inner child. I do coloring with my children, and it is one of the relaxing rituals
Mhm.
for me, and it's also good for them. We also have rituals that are religious, like reading scriptures and praying together. But whatever practice you find that is spiritual with your children, so that they experience mindfulness, and so that they are pressed in the present moment with themselves. Number three, I would say limit social media. It's okay if they throw a tantrum, but in order for them to limit their social media, and I'm guilty, I have to limit my social media, which is not easy in my line of work. So do as I do, not as I say.
We circle back to that, huh?
And yeah, it is hard. And I'm telling you, I'm guilty of it myself, where it's like I get sucked into the social media, and it is the hardest thing. But I have to remind myself, what am I modeling for my children? Because if I am on TikTok the whole day, that's what they're going to be doing as well. And speaking of TikTok and new social media platforms and things like that, I need to be savvy to know how they use it, learning their terminology that they're using without ridiculing it. I remember my children saying one time, and they're not children, my daughters, saying one time, like, oh, I ship this person and this person. And I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, shipping? Where are you shipping them to? And it actually means relationship. Like you are thinking that this person and this person are going to be together in a relationship. And so I started using ship and telling my daughters, oh, I'm shipping so and so. Why? Because I want to honor their language. It is not better or worse than mine, it is just different. And I see a lot of mocking of new generations when we had our own things that our parents didn't understand,
Absolutely.
and they probably had things that their parents didn't understand. The world is evolving, and so we have to give space for some of that too. It is a balance. It is not never, it is not only, it is both and. So social media can also be very dangerous, and I've experienced that in my home where, you know, I've had threats of that, of people trying to scam or lead children astray and really target children. So it's a place where children are targeted. So also learning and teaching our children how to discern the dangers of social platforms and social forums. So there's a lot of that. It's a lot of work. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but it is important. It is important if we want to preserve our children's relationship with our children and want to preserve their safety and
Before
security.
we jump off of social media, because I would like us to spend a little bit of time, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Immigrant parents have a responsibility to their children. The responsibility is not just to feed them, protect them, and reassure them through love. However, the conflict of that is happening somewhere in the social media, where our children now are so driven to have more likes than the affirmation they get at home from their parents. They're so driven with being perfect, the Kardashian perfection, rather than the simplicity of being me. If you may want to speak to those children that may be listening to you, and if in the same time, with the same cognition, if you're speaking to the immigrant parents, how do we help our children? How do our children learn to self-authenticate by telling a story of themselves that is not based on chasing perfection, but is vulnerable and true of who they are?
Ooh, that is so good, because I think that sometimes we push our children to perform, and we are the ones who kind of raise them to understand like the carrot and the stick type of mentality. If they get A's in school, then we congratulate them. If they get C's in school, then we tell them they need to do better. And if they get F's in school, they're a total failure. So we are grading our children. And I am a big advocate of education. I wouldn't be here without my education. So thank God for that I was able to do that. But I think we need to praise our children for who they are and not for what they do. That's number one. And as a young person, if you're listening, I think that it's important for you to understand that we are easily invalidated as young people, and I count myself in that because this happened to me as a young person as well. Your brain is developing. That's why you value your peers' approval over your parents' approval. It is normal. That happens. That is, good for you. If you're thinking, oh, my parents maybe don't have all the answers, that's a good thing. That's what your brain is supposed to do that. to challenge what you know, what you've been told, to look for who you are. And so that is perfect that you're questioning your parents, actually. And parents, get real. That is what's supposed to happen. That's what adolescence is for. That's what, that's why puberty happens. We're changing uh, our body, but also the brain is developing. And it's like a toddler. There's myelination, and myelination means that all of this activity is happening in your person's brain. So you've been controlled by your parent. Your parents' reality has been your reality. You're questioning that. Don't go and be controlled by somebody else. Be your own person. Question your parent, question society from a place of who you are and what matters to you and who you want to be. Focus on the vision of who you can be, because the thing is that as young people, you're falling from one place that actually is coming from a good place into the jaws of anything that can happen. And so definitely try to cultivate a circle of people who have your back, because I know that being social is very important at that stage and age, and that's normal. But understand that you getting clear on your values, getting clear on your dreams, getting clear on who you want to be in this world doesn't happen on social media. It happens within you. And you gotta spend time developing self-awareness, which means being aware of who you are outside of mom and dad and grandma and counselor and mentor and teachers. That's good. Don't be who they're telling you
What's
to
a
be,
safe place for them
but
to
also
share
don't
their
be who,
vision?
sometimes young people don't have a safe space. I'm just gonna be honest with you, to share their vision, because number one, if it's not what society wants, they don't want to admit it. And number two, their parents may have an agenda of what they want for their child. So I would say, utilizing social media actually to find groups of people who are doing what you're doing, that is, or that what you want to do. So let's pretend that you want to, be an artist and play the violin, and your parents tell you there's no money in that or something. Or you need to be an accountant or something and have job security. Then find places where people are talking about the violin in a positive way, and changing the world and making a contribution, because that's how you know if something is good for you, is because it's good for everybody.
The
And so I think finding a community of people who have that vision or understand that vision.
Very, very good, very good. So, gifts of pain, your book series. Um,
Yeah.
I know here I'm talking to our listeners, and I want to say, hey, let's go get your book series. What are they gonna be getting from your books?
Well, it's actually one of my, I don't know what to call it, like most rewarding, most meaningful projects. I thought that I wanted to write a book called The Gifts of Pain about my story, and it turned out that one morning I just realized, oh my gosh, I got this download. No, it's not about you, it's about many authors, many people, and you are amplifying their stories. So I have a story system that I teach in my community, Transformational Storytellers, and I teach the authors how to write their story in 300 words. And I have a system for that. And so every book in the series has 31 stories told by different people of all ages. I have 10-year-olds in the series, and I have 84-year-olds in the series, and all in between, people from all over the world, all walks of life. And these are stories of people who went through an adverse situation of all types, and they found a gift for themselves, and then they're helping make an impact because they went through that. And I'm actually about to start volume 5. So if anyone wants to be part of that, telling their stories, it's thegiftsofpain.com. But the book, this is number 2. I have it right here because I was reading something. The book, The Gifts of Pain, also has exercises and journaling places and interactive activities. Oh my gosh, I got chills because this is the chapter by Terrence Dixon. And wow, I think that's a God wink, I call it, because Terrence actually finished his story and then passed away shortly after he finished, even before we were able to publish it. And this book is dedicated to him. To Coach T, we are grateful for your joy, love, and wisdom. Your influence will stay with us as we commit to spreading the light you shared. So his story is here, and that's one of the things about writing our story. It lives on. I mean, this book has been sold all over the world, and Terrence's story is shared even after he passed on. So I didn't even plan that, but yeah,
I wouldn't
that's why the Gifts of Pain is so special.
I wouldn't do you any service if I don't plug into your pain now.
Yeah,
Your memory and relationship of Coach Terrence is probably profoundly very strong because you can hear it in your voice.
yeah.
How do you channel that memory in your day-to-day life?
Oh my goodness, that's really powerful because I had the honor of meeting Terrence and helping him with this story. And one of the things that I learned from him was how lived he showed up fully to everything that he did. And so that's what I think about his memory. I mean, and I know that he lives on because I've been on the other side, and I know that he's still with us in another form. But one of the things that I truly learned from him was how he showed up fully and presently with every person in his life. And that's how we all remember him, even in the cohort of book 2, but also in other spaces where in the community where he was present. And I can tell you that that's how we honor those who have passed on, is by learning from what they shared with us and continuing to give it to others. And that's what his life was about being authentic. And he called it showing our scars to others. And so I invite everyone to do that, to really live authentically and to not be afraid to show who you are authentically, and be unapologetic about the gifts that you have to bring. Share your story. It's not a source of shame, it's a source of healing, not only for yourself but for others. And if you put it in a book, if you share it with others, it will it will help you really. It will be immortal. It will be passed on forever.
Dr. Elayna, I want to thank you for choosing to come to the Immigrant Nation podcast today. This has been such a profound experience for me, and I'm sure for all our listeners. I really would love for you to come back again because, my God, I still have way too much to ask and so much curiosity about what your experiences have been and what your drive and goals are. As the founder of Positive Moms, what should our listeners expect to find on your website? And what are your parting words?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really a great conversation. You're pulling all of those things out of me. So thank you for your wisdom and being a safe person to speak to. And yeah, in thepositivemom.com, it's a blog for moms all over the world. Actually, we are in 168 countries, and it is wisdom to transform our trauma as people who understand what it's like to overcome adverse childhood experiences, because we want to prevent that adversity in our children, but also know how to help them process the inevitable adversity that they're going to suffer. There are three places of being a mom: entrepreneur, motherhood, and mindset. So, those three categories. And also the place of the transformational storytellers, where you can learn to transform your story and tell it in a powerful way so that others can get a gift from that. And and my parting words are to make sure that you are owning your immigrant story, that you're getting those pieces of your immigrant story that are precious to you, to pass them on with joy, but that you're also processing those pieces that are painful, those pieces that are difficult, those pieces that are unspeakable, to give them a voice. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, used to say, if it's human, it's mentionable, and if it's mentionable, it's manageable. So that is my piece of advice, is that we start to mention those feelings, we start to tell our story, we start to unburden ourselves so that we can be an instrument of peace and joy in our world.
Become the instrument of peace, joy across the globe. Immigrants, I am so grateful you got to take this beautiful ride with us. Dr. Elayna Fernandez, thank you, thank you, thank you. She is the best selling author, global celebrated storyteller, and the empowering founder of Positive Moms. From our story of poor survival to sheer audacity and grit, she's been able to tell her story from Dominican Republic to taking the stages of TEDx, United Nations stages, and her journey is a powerful testimony of resilience, a true story of an immigrant. She's a mother who celebrates motherhood and a passion, passionate driver of radical hope. Today's episode is being brought to us by our sponsors, Medicap Group of Companies. They are trusted private ambulance services from the state of Texas and Florida. Thank you, Medicap. Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. Please, please, please make time for us again soon. Thank
Absolutely.
you. We really do truly appreciate you.